My name is Jessica, and this terrifying incident happened in 2018 in a small suburban town near Phoenix, Arizona, when my marriage was just a little over a year old, and our baby girl, Mia Faith, was barely 6 months. My husband, James, had been getting unusually sick for months, losing weight so fast it frightened everyone, dropping from 145 pounds to almost 92, growing weaker by the day, and eventually losing his job. Yet every medical test came back perfectly normal, leaving us confused and scared. We were living with James's parents, Linda Harris and Charles, along with his older brother, Mark Sullivan, Mark's wife, Nicole, and their kids, all in a big, old house with an open terrace and a yard behind it. One evening around 7:45 p.m., James left home, saying a friend had called him urgently. He loved wearing cologne, and even that night he sprayed on his favorite scent before leaving. But when he returned around 8 p.m., he didn't look like the same person. His face had changed, distant, blank, and almost hollow, like he wasn't fully aware of where he was. He began speaking strangely, muttering random things as if drifting between realities. Without warning, he walked straight out of the house, up the stairs, across the terrace, and into the empty field behind our place, where he suddenly began vomiting uncontrollably. I panicked and followed him, holding his shoulders as he collapsed to the ground. When I managed to help him back inside, he walked into our room where Mia Faith lay asleep in her cradle. The moment his eyes fell on her, he let out a scream so chilling it felt like my heart froze. "Don't take her. Leave her alone," he cried, as if someone invisible stood right beside her. "Don't touch my baby." Linda Harris rushed in, alarmed, and I handed her Mia Faith while James backed into a corner, trembling violently. At first, we thought he had a fever or a panic attack, but then he bolted toward the terrace door again, screaming, "My baby! My Mia Faith!" as if someone was chasing him or threatening him. The terrace had no railing, just an open drop into the lower courtyard, and I knew if he reached it in that state, he could fall or jump. Terrified, I grabbed his leg and sat on the floor, hugging his ankles with all my strength to keep him from running. He dragged me several feet as if I weighed nothing. I screamed for help, and finally Linda, Charles, Mark Sullivan, and Nicole came running. It took all of us to push him back into the bedroom, but even then he kept fighting, screaming, thrashing wildly, and begging someone unseen to leave his baby alone. My uncle-in-law, Larry Coleman, from downstairs came up too, and when we had no choice, the men tied James's wrists and ankles to our heavy wooden bed frame. That bed usually needed 4 men to lift, but James, who weighed barely 92 pounds, lifted the entire bed off the ground with one hand and slammed it onto the floor. The shock of that sight made my knees give way. None of us could understand how such strength was possible. I called my brother, Joshua, who rushed over. Even he thought maybe James had accidentally taken some drug, so he tried to feed him roasted chickpeas, thinking it would help. But nothing changed. Joshua grabbed James's phone, called every friend he knew, but all of them insisted they hadn't met him that day. Soon my cousins, uncles, and a local religious pastor, Paul Edwards, arrived. When Pastor Paul sprinkled blessed water on James, he exploded, screaming, twisting, pulling so violently the ropes nearly tore. 6 grown men held him down, yet he fought like a trapped animal with unnatural strength. When Pastor Paul questioned him, "Who are you? What is your name?" James answered with different voices, different tones, different names, like multiple beings speaking through him. After long prayers, recitations, and blessed water, James suddenly went still and normal again. He looked around, confused, and asked why everyone was gathered in the room at night. We told him he had a fever, and we were checking on him. Eventually, everyone left, except Joshua, who stayed in case it happened again. We turned off the lights but left the door open. Around midnight, James sat up in bed, walked to the doorway, and sat on the floor with his head buried in his knees, rocking back and forth slowly like a child. Joshua called his name twice. No response. The third time, James slowly lifted his face. His eyes were empty, glassy, lifeless. Joshua told him to sleep, but James didn't speak, just went back to rocking. After 15 minutes, he snapped out of it and asked what happened. Joshua finally left around 1 a.m. Everyone else in the house slept as if nothing concerning had happened. Even Linda and Charles went to their room, leaving me alone with a man who had been growling, screaming, thrashing, and lifting furniture hours earlier. Linda came back briefly and told me, "Don't go into that room. If something is attached to him, it could attach to you too. Leave him alone tonight." I snapped for the first time. If everyone leaves him, who will stay with him? He's my husband. I'm not leaving him alone. I put Mia Faith in her cradle and sat beside James all night, praying constantly while he clung to me, shivering in fear, whispering, "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me." Then, in a trembling voice, he stared at the corner of the room and said, "She's there. She's standing there." I looked. Nothing. "What is she saying?" I whispered. "She wants me to go with her," James replied, voice shaking. Filled with fear and anger, I said loudly into the empty room, "If you have any courage, take me instead. You cannot have him." James whispered, "She said she'll take me anyway." I said, "Try it. My God is bigger than anything you are." Right before sunrise, the presence vanished. James finally slept. But the next day at noon, it started again, pacing, staring, circling the room, eyes empty, refusing blessed water. Every sunset, the episodes worsened. Pastor Luke Harper came and explained that something unclean had followed James home, but hadn't entered him fully. It was trying to control him, frighten him, weaken him. He gave us protective amulets and instructions. That night was slightly calmer, but the next evening everything returned, more violent than before. Finally, Pastor Luke brought a sealed bottle and trapped whatever was influencing James into it through intense prayers. The next day, we buried the bottle deep in a cemetery far from the town. After that, James woke up fully normal, with no memory of the previous 3 days except the face of a terrifying woman wearing yellow, her face hidden by long black hair, telling him to jump off the roof or she would throw Mia Faith off instead. Later, Pastor Luke told me someone close to the family had used James's clothing to perform dark magic on him, intentionally sending that entity after him. Today, James is completely healthy. Mia Faith is 8. We have another child, too. But those 3 nights, those screams, those empty eyes, that dark presence in the corner, I will never forget as long as I live. My name is Jacob Reed, and I've been sharing stories for months, but this one isn't mine alone. It belongs to my friend Timothy's brother. It happened back in 1990 when we were stationed for government duty near a quiet mountain town in Colorado, right beside a sprawling old cemetery. Our rented bungalow sat on a small hill with the cemetery gate directly across the street. A bright floodlight hung over the entrance, lighting up the place every night, and another glowed from a massive oak tree near the groundskeeper's shed. That shed held tools, shovels, buckets, everything needed for burials. The groundskeeper, George Miller, only showed up when called. He didn't live there. We rotated night shifts to guard some expensive equipment stored outside. One morning, around 10 a.m., a toddler's funeral took place in the cemetery. Some of our crew attended the burial. Nearby was a 24-hour diner run by a kind, middle-aged guy named David Patel, helped by his partner Joseph. We'd often swing by for late-night coffee and chats. That night, I was on second shift after Timothy and before Joseph. At exactly 1:10 a.m., patrolling under a bright, full moon, I spotted a slender figure draped in a white sheet, slowly walking toward the cemetery gate. She paused, glanced around, then slipped inside. She veered toward the left wall and vanished behind the gravestones, like she'd crouched or started digging. A chill hit me hard. Was it my imagination? A grieving mother? But something felt off. Way off. I paced, heart racing, then quietly woke Timothy, finger to my lips. He grumbled about his sleep, but when we reached the gate, the woman was gone. Timothy let out a sharp, "What the hell?" I told him what I saw. He shook his head. "This ain't right, not at all." He woke Joseph. We grabbed 2 pocket knives and 3 flashlights. The other guys in the bungalow were out cold. If things got bad, Joseph would flash the light or bang metal. We crept outside, sticking to the trees, moving silently along the cemetery's outer wall until we reached the big oak by George Miller's shed. Peeking over the wall, we saw her, inside the shed, rummaging through buckets and tools, her movements frantic. She came out with a bucket of water and a small mug. She walked under the floodlight, set down bricks, arranged them neatly, and grabbed more. Then she returned with a white bundle. When she placed it on the bricks under the light, our hearts nearly stopped. It was the toddler's body, the same kid buried that morning. His tiny, pale face glowed in the lamplight. We were paralyzed. She removed the shroud and hung it on a branch. Then she dropped her white sheet, revealing a strikingly beautiful young woman, maybe 22 or 23, her face almost ethereal in the light. It was Rachel Turner. She grabbed a small red cloth and a large bottle from the shed. Sitting over the child's body, she soaked the cloth with water from the bottle and wiped herself, slowly, like a ritual. She faced east, muttering strange words, then west, north, south, 4 times total. By the 3rd round, my stomach twisted. Timothy whispered, shaking with anger, "This is black magic. She's using that kid for something evil." By the 4th, we couldn't take it. Timothy hissed, "We're stopping her." I grabbed his arm. "This could be dangerous." "Then go," he said. "I'm not letting this continue." Before Rachel could pour the last of the water, we stepped out. Timothy stood right in front of her. She froze, stumbled, then collapsed, trembling as she saw our knives. We threw the sheet over her for decency and tied her to the tree so she couldn't bolt. Timothy carefully washed the child's body with fresh water, rewrapped it in the shroud, and we hurried to rebury him. The cemetery felt heavier, darker, silent except for a faint owl hoot in the distance. We took Rachel to the diner. Under the fluorescent lights, David Patel recognized her immediately. She lived nearby, married just 2 years. When we questioned her, she broke down, sobbing. Her mother-in-law had been relentless, mocking her for not getting pregnant, calling her barren, worthless. Her husband had left for a job in Denver 3 days earlier, quietly saying he couldn't stand up to his mother's demands for a grandchild. Desperate and broken, Rachel met a woman who offered a horrific solution, a forbidden ritual to unlock fertility. She had 2 choices: meet the woman's twisted demands or do the ritual alone. Rachel chose the ritual. It started with bathing using the red cloth and water. The final step was to wrap herself and the child in the toddler's shroud before reburying him at sunrise. We'd stopped her just in time. Timothy, furious, slapped her. David scolded her. "If you wanted a kid, pray, get help, not this garbage." At 2:40 a.m., we took her to her mother. Susan Ward, Susan, horrified, slapped Rachel and wept, begging God for forgiveness. We told her everything. Rachel swore she'd repent forever. Walking back to the bungalow, the night felt colder. The cemetery tainted by what we'd witnessed. Rachel Turner, a beautiful young woman, crushed by pressure and cruelty, had fallen into a darkness so deep she'd lost herself.